Hello there, and welcome to Midnight Anthropology. Tonight, we're exploring the evolutionary purpose of romantic love. In every culture ever studied, humans fall in love. This experience appears again and again. We've written about it for thousands of years, painted it, sung about it, built entire lives around it. But why? What purpose does this feeling serve? Why would evolution build something so consuming, so irrational and so powerful into the human brain? To understand why we love, we need to start with what happens inside your brain when you meet someone who captivates you. Because romantic love isn't one feeling. It's a cascade of chemical reactions, each one serving a specific function, each one refined over millennia to solve a problem our ancestors faced. Before we start, if you like these gentle explainer videos for sleep, I'd appreciate if you click the like button and subscribe. Leave a comment on where in the world you're listening from. Now, take a deep breath and find a comfortable spot. Let's begin. When you first lock eyes with someone who attracts you, your brain doesn't wait for permission. Within a fifth of a second, regions deep in your brain begin to light up. The ventral tegmental area and the caudate nucleus, both packed with receptors for dopamine, surge into activity. Dopamine is often called the reward chemical, and for good reason. When it floods these regions, you feel pleasure, motivation, a sense that something important is happening. Your brain is telling you to pay attention, to pursue this, to remember this person. This same reward system activates when you eat food you love, when you accomplish something difficult, when you experience anything your brain deems valuable for survival. In studies using functional MRI scanners, researchers have shown people photographs of someone they're in love with and compared the brain activity to when they look at a friend. The difference is striking. Looking at a romantic partner activates the brain's reward pathways in ways that looking at even a close friend does not. Your brain treats romantic love like a biological priority. What's remarkable is that this response happens automatically. You don't decide to activate your reward system. You can't will yourself to feel that surge of dopamine any more than you can will yourself to feel hungry or tired. The process unfolds below the level of conscious control, in regions of the brain that evolved long before humans developed language or self-awareness. The ventral tegmental area sits in the midbrain, one of the most ancient parts of our neural architecture, a region we share with reptiles and birds. Its primary function is to identify what's important for survival and motivate you to pursue it. When it lights up for another person, your brain is saying, at the most fundamental level, this matters. But dopamine doesn't work alone, and the frantic energy of early attraction, as thrilling as it feels, can't sustain itself forever. As you spend more time with someone, as the initial rush begins to settle into something steadier, as you touch them and physical intimacy develops, another chemical enters the picture to transform that temporary high into something more lasting. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, gets released during skin-to-skin contact, even during a long embrace. Oxytocin has been part of mammalian biology for millions of years. Originally, it evolved to facilitate childbirth and nursing, creating a bond between mother and infant. But somewhere in our evolutionary past, this same chemical system got repurposed for romantic attachment. When oxytocin binds to receptors in your brain's reward centers, something interesting happens. It amplifies the dopamine response. The pleasure you feel from being near your partner intensifies. your brain begins to associate this specific person with deep contentment and safety. Oxytocin doesn't just make you feel good. It makes you feel good specifically when you're with them. This is how a preference forms, how one person becomes irreplaceable in your mind. Researchers studying prairie voles, small rodents that form lifelong pair bonds, discovered something remarkable. If you block oxytocin receptors in a prairie vole's brain, they lose the ability to form attachments. They'll still mate, but they won't bond. They won't prefer their partner over any other vole. The introduction of oxytocin into the reward system is what transforms mating into bonding. Humans operate on similar principles, though our bonding is far more complex, involving language, memory, and cultural meaning layered on top of the chemistry. There's also vasopressin, a close relative of oxytocin, particularly important in male bonding and attachment. Studies show that vasopressin plays a role in partner preference and in behaviors associated with protecting a mate and offspring. Together, oxytocin and vasopressin create what we experience as attachment, that deep sense of connection that develops after the initial rush of attraction fades into something steadier. But early love also involves stress. When you're falling in love, cortisol levels in your blood rise. Cortisol is your body's main stress hormone, the one that increases when you're anxious or uncertain. This explains why new love often feels destabilizing. Your heart races. You lose your appetite. You lie awake thinking about them. You feel a kind of pleasant anxiety, a hyper-awareness. Some researchers believe this stress response serves a function. It keeps you alert, focused on forming this new bond, attentive to signals that might indicate whether this person will stay or leave. At the same time, serotonin levels drop. Low serotonin is associated with obsessive thinking, which is why people in the early stages of love often can't stop thinking about their partner. They check their phone constantly. They replay conversations. They analyze every interaction. This obsessive quality has a purpose. It focuses your mental energy on the relationship, on learning everything about this person, on strengthening the bond before it's fully formed. And so these chemicals work together, creating what we experience as the euphoria and obsession of early love, binding us to another person through pleasure and attachment in ways that feel magical, but follow predictable biological patterns. But humans aren't the only animals with dopamine and oxytocin. So why did romantic love become such a defining feature of human life? To answer that, we need to look back millions of years to a time before our ancestors loved the way we do now. If you observe chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, you'll notice something about their mating system. They don't form pair bonds. Males compete for access to females. Females mate with multiple males. There's no lasting partnership, no shared investment in raising offspring. The mother raises her young alone, carrying them, nursing them, protecting them. The father plays no role. This is the ancestral pattern for great apes. At some point in human evolution, this changed. The fossil record gives us clues. If you look at the size differences between males and females in ancient hominins, you can make inferences about their social structure. Species with high sexual dimorphism, where males are much larger than females, tend to have intense male competition and little pair bonding. In gorillas, for example, males can be nearly twice the size of females, and one male controls a harem. In species with less size difference, you often find more cooperation between sexes and more pair bonding. Early human ancestors like Australopithecus show moderate sexual dimorphism, suggesting a transition was already underway. By the time we reach Homo erectus, about 2 million years ago, the size difference between males and females had decreased significantly. Males were still larger, but not dramatically so. This suggests that male-to-male competition was decreasing, and that males and females were beginning to form more stable partnerships. The question is why? Several theories attempt to explain this shift. One early hypothesis focused on infanticide. In many primate species, when a new male takes over a group, he kills the infant sired by the previous male. This brings the females back into fertility sooner, allowing him to father his own offspring. If infanticide was common among our ancestors, then males who stayed with one female and protected their offspring would have had a reproductive advantage. Their children would survive. Over time, this could select for males who formed attachments to specific females, and for females who preferred males willing to stay. Another hypothesis focuses on resource distribution. As human ancestors moved into new habitats and faced different ecological challenges, food sources may have become more dispersed. If females were spread out across a landscape, it would have been difficult for one male to monopolize multiple females. Instead, males who focused on guarding and provisioning a single female would have been more successful. This mate-guarding strategy could have been a stepping stone toward true pair bonding. But perhaps the most compelling explanation involves the unique demands of raising human children. And this brings us to the real puzzle at the heart of human evolution. Human babies are absurdly helpless. If you compare a newborn human to almost any other mammal, the difference is stark. A baby horse can stand within hours. A baby elephant, though dependent, can keep up with the herd. Even our closest relatives, chimpanzees and gorillas, give birth to infants who can cling to their mother's fur from day one. Human babies can't hold their own heads up. They can't regulate their body temperature. They can't move themselves anywhere. For months, they're completely helpless, requiring constant care just to survive. And this helplessness extends far beyond infancy. A young chimpanzee is weaned by age 5 and reaches sexual maturity by age 13. A human child isn't weaned until age 2 or 3 at the earliest, doesn't reach adult size until the late teens, and requires intensive care and feeding for well over a decade. No other primate has such a long period of dependency. This extreme helplessness is directly related to our brains. The human brain is enormous relative to body size. An adult human brain weighs about 3.5 pounds, roughly 3 times the size of a chimpanzee brain, despite similar body weights. This large brain is expensive. At age 5, a child's brain consumes about 66% of the body's resting metabolism. Even in adults, the brain uses about 20% of the body's energy, far more than in other primates. Growing and maintaining this organ requires enormous resources. But here's the problem. A human infant's brain is only about 25% of its adult size at birth. In chimpanzees, the brain is closer to 40% of adult size at birth. Human babies are born with brains that still have massive amounts of growing to do. Why? Because if we waited until our brains were fully grown, our heads would be too large to fit through the birth canal. Human babies are born early, in a sense, still neurologically immature, so that birth is physically possible. This creates a crisis. For the first year of life, a human baby's brain is growing at an extraordinary rate, consuming vast amounts of energy. During this time, the infant contributes nothing. It can't help gather food. It can't protect itself. It can't even signal its needs clearly. It just needs, constantly and urgently. And this need continues for years. For a mother to raise such a helpless, energy-intensive offspring alone would have been nearly impossible for most of human evolution. She would need to gather food for herself, food sufficient to produce milk, while also carrying and protecting an infant that couldn't cling to her on its own. The moment she had another child, the challenge would multiply. She'd have two dependents, both requiring more resources than they could provide. This is where pair bonding becomes not just helpful, but potentially necessary. If a male remained with a female and contributed resources, food, protection, and care, the survival chances for their offspring would increase dramatically. Children with two invested parents would eat better, grow stronger, and be more likely to survive to adulthood. Over thousands of generations, this created selection pressure for traits that facilitated long-term partnerships. And this is what makes romantic love so powerful. Romantic love is the mechanism that keeps two people together. It's a commitment device built into our neural architecture. The euphoria you feel when you first fall in love motivates you to pursue a partner. The attachment that develops over time motivates you to stay, even when staying is difficult, even when other opportunities arise. Romantic love suppresses your interest in alternative partners. Studies show that people in satisfying relationships literally perceive other attractive people as less attractive than single people do. Your brain downplays the appeal of others because keeping you focused on your current partner increases the likelihood that your children will survive. Anthropologists studying traditional societies have found that in cultures where fathers invest heavily in their children, providing food, protection, and teaching, those children have better outcomes. They're healthier, more likely to survive, and more successful in their own reproductive lives. Romantic love evolved to create that investment, to turn a mating encounter into a partnership into a family. But if romantic love is a biological adaptation shaped by evolution, we'd expect to see it everywhere, and we do. In the early 1990s, anthropologists William Jankowiak and Edward Fisher conducted a comprehensive survey of ethnographic records from 166 cultures. They looked for evidence of romantic love, defined as intense attraction to a specific person, longing to be with them, and emotional dependence on the relationship. They found evidence of romantic love in nearly 90% of the cultures studied. In the remaining cultures, the absence of evidence didn't mean romantic love didn't exist. It likely meant that anthropologists simply hadn't documented it. Many early ethnographers didn't think to ask about love. They focused on kinship structures, subsistence patterns, and religious beliefs. The intimate feelings between romantic partners weren't considered worthy of academic attention. When researchers went back to these same societies and asked directly, they found love there too. More recent studies have expanded this research. A 2021 study surveyed over 60,000 people across 156 countries, using the triangular love scale, which measures intimacy, passion, and commitment. The scale worked across all cultures and languages tested. People in Tokyo and people in rural Kenya, people in Norway and people in Nigeria, all described experiences that mapped onto these dimensions. The specific ways they expressed love varied. The cultural meanings attached to it varied. But the underlying experience appeared universal. Even in societies where marriages are arranged, where romantic love is not considered a basis for choosing a spouse, people still fall in love. They just fall in love after marriage, or with someone other than their spouse, or secretly. The capacity exists regardless of whether culture endorses it. Some cultures celebrate romantic love as the highest form of human experience. Others view it with suspicion, as a disruptive force that threatens family stability and social order. But in all cases, the feeling itself exists, suggesting that it's not a cultural invention, but a biological inheritance. Evolutionary psychologists point out that for something to be universal across cultures, it almost certainly has deep evolutionary roots. Language is universal. Every human society has language because the capacity for language is built into our brains through millions of years of evolution. The same appears true for romantic love. The capacity is there waiting, ready to activate under the right conditions. And those conditions are surprisingly consistent. People tend to fall in love with someone who is available, someone who shows interest in them, someone they spend time with. Proximity matters. Reciprocity matters. But there's also something more, a sense of resonance, of compatibility. Researchers studying long-term relationships have found that partners who remain happily together for decades often speak of their connection as feeling destined or meant to be. This sense of destiny might seem irrational, but it serves a function. Believing your relationship is special, that this person is uniquely right for you, increases commitment. It makes you more likely to invest in the relationship, to work through conflicts, to stay together. This belief in soulmates or fated love appears across cultures as well. From ancient Chinese philosophy to Greek mythology to modern Western romance, humans tell stories about love as a cosmic force that brings two people together. These narratives aren't universal in their details, but the underlying theme is love feels bigger than choice. It feels like something that happens to you, something beyond conscious control. And in a way, it is. Your conscious mind might decide to go on a date, but it doesn't decide whether you fall in love. That happens deeper, in brain regions tied to reward, motivation, and survival. So romantic love evolved to facilitate pair bonding, and pair bonding evolved to help raise vulnerable human children. But the story doesn't end there. Romantic love does more than just keep parents together. It shapes human society in profound ways. When two people form a pair bond, they don't exist in isolation. They exist within families, communities, and social networks. In many traditional societies, a married couple becomes the core of an extended family structure. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and older siblings all contribute to raising children. This cooperative breeding strategy is relatively rare among primates, but common in humans. Romantic pair bonds make this possible by creating stable units around which extended family support can organize. Studies of hunter-gatherer societies, which likely resemble the social structures of our ancestors, show that children benefit enormously from having multiple caregivers. Grandmothers in particular play a crucial role. In several African foraging groups, children with living grandmothers have significantly higher survival rates than children without them. The presence of a grandmother allows a mother to have children at shorter intervals because the grandmother helps provide food and care. This wouldn't work as well without stable partnerships, because without pair bonds, it would be much harder to identify which children belong to which family unit. Romantic love also facilitates the transmission of culture and knowledge. Human children don't just need food and protection. They need to learn skills, language, social norms, and the accumulated knowledge of their community. This learning takes years and requires intensive teaching. Having two invested parents means more teaching, more modeling, more opportunities for children to learn the complex behaviors that human survival requires. There's also evidence that romantic pair bonds contribute to mental and physical health. People in stable, satisfying romantic relationships tend to live longer, recover from illness faster, and report higher levels of well-being than single people or people in unstable relationships. This isn't just because happy people are more likely to find partners. Studies that follow people over time show that entering a good relationship improves health outcomes, suggesting a causal link. The support, both emotional and practical, that comes from a committed partner provides a buffer against stress and hardship. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. If romantic love evolved to create partnerships that benefit children, then the mechanism should reward successful partnerships with better health and survival. The oxytocin and endorphins released during positive interactions with a partner reduce stress hormones, lower blood pressure, and strengthen immune function. Your body benefits from love because, for most of human history, being in a stable partnership increased your chances of survival and your children's chances of survival. But romantic love is also flexible. It doesn't require reproduction to activate. People fall in love whether or not they intend to have children. Same-sex couples experience romantic love with the same intensity and neurological patterns as opposite-sex couples. Older people, well past reproductive age, still fall in love. This suggests that while romantic love evolved in the context of reproduction, it's become something more general, a bonding mechanism that operates independently of its original function. This flexibility is actually common with evolved traits. Once a mechanism exists, it can be co-opted for other purposes. Feathers, for example, evolved for temperature regulation in dinosaurs, but were later co-opted for flight in birds. Romantic love may have evolved to facilitate raising children, but once the neural circuitry existed, it could facilitate other kinds of deep, committed partnerships as well. Which brings us to the present. We live in a world vastly different from the one in which romantic love evolved. We have birth control, which decouples sex from reproduction. We have economic systems where individuals can survive independently without a partner. We have extended lifespans, medical care, and social safety nets that reduce the survival pressures our ancestors faced. And yet, we still fall in love. We still seek romantic partnerships. We still build our lives around the pursuit and maintenance of these bonds. Why? If romantic love evolved to solve problems we no longer face, why does it still dominate so much of human life? The answer is that evolution doesn't work that way. We carry the bodies and brains of our ancestors. The fact that modern life is different doesn't rewrite our biology overnight. The neural systems that create romantic love are still there, still functioning as they did 100,000 years ago. When you meet someone who captivates you, your ventral tegmental area still floods with dopamine. Your brain still releases oxytocin when you're close to someone you love. These mechanisms don't know or care whether you live in a hunter-gatherer band or a modern city. They activate because that's what they were built to do. And there's a deeper truth here. While the specific challenges our ancestors faced may have changed, the fundamental human needs that romantic love addresses haven't. We still need connection. We still need support. We still need to feel that we matter to someone, that someone is committed to our well-being. Loneliness is painful, not as a modern invention, but as a biological signal. It tells us something is wrong, that we lack the social bonds we need to thrive. Romantic love, even when it doesn't lead to children, provides something essential. It provides meaning, purpose, and a sense of being fully known by another person. It creates a refuge from the impersonal forces of the wider world. These aren't trivial benefits. They're deeply connected to our nature as social primates who survived by forming coalitions and depending on each other. The modern world also allows us to understand and talk about love in ways our ancestors couldn't. We can name the chemicals involved. We can describe the brain regions that light up. We can trace the evolutionary history. This knowledge doesn't make love less powerful. If anything, it deepens the mystery. Because even knowing how love works, even understanding the dopamine and oxytocin, doesn't diminish the feeling when you look at someone and your heart lifts. Some people worry that reducing love to biology makes it meaningless. But that's a misunderstanding. Love is biological, yes, but so is everything we experience. Joy is biological. Awe is biological. The sense of beauty you feel watching a sunset is biological. That doesn't make these experiences less real or less important. It means they're part of what we are, part of the physical reality of being human. Romantic love is one of the most powerful forces in human life because it was built to be. It was refined over hundreds of thousands of years to motivate us, to bond us, to keep us connected through hardship and time. The poets were right to write about it. The philosophers were right to debate it. The artists were right to try capturing it. They were recognizing something fundamental, something carved into the human experience by the long, slow work of evolution. And so love continues, as it has for hundreds of thousands of years, not because we choose it, but because it chose us. A quiet inheritance written into the very architecture of what it means to be human. That feeling which brought two people together on an ancient savanna still flickers in hearts today, carrying forward the same chemistry, the same pull, the same promise of connection that kept our species alive. Thanks for being here. Sleep well.